Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Depending on where you're from, I would like to wish you a very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules and being a part of this session today. Today's webinar is going to be on exploring 5 of the most common types of cyber attacks. And these 5 common cyber attacks we'll be discussing today are brute force, malware, phishing, SQL injection, and DDoS attacks. So why this webinar? How is this webinar going to be beneficial to you? Why do you have to stay with me for the next 45 minutes or so? Well, these 5 attacks are very, very popular amongst hackers. Even in 2021, our organizations are constantly at risk from these 5 attacks. At this point, I would like to bring up one of Sun Tzu's advice. Sun Tzu was a Chinese military strategist and is credited as the author of The Art of War. So in that book, he says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. It's absolutely necessary that you understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures that an adversary might use to compromise your organization. Using this knowledge, you'll be better prepared to defend your organization. In this webinar, I'm going to share with you some of this knowledge about the 5 common attacks that you see on your screen right here. The need to understand attackers becomes even more critical during the current times when attackers have become extremely sophisticated. They are constantly looking for new ways to compromise organizations and steal sensitive data. For example, the attackers of today don't even need to download a malicious payload onto a victim's machine anymore. They can run the malware right off of memory and thus make it a fileless malware. Attackers have also started using built-in tools such as PowerShell to compromise Active Directory environments, and this is called living off the land. And apart from this, attackers are also leveraging the fear emanating from current world events to wreak havoc. For example, over the last 1 year, many attacks took advantage of the fear of COVID-19. To protect against these 5 types of attacks, you need to first understand how they operate, what the modus operandi of attackers are, and what vulnerabilities they compromise. You can then be able to emulate adversaries' actions and build attack scenarios, perform behavioral analytics, assess defense gaps, and also take the necessary security steps. So that's what we're going to see over the next 45 minutes or so. And that is why you have to stay with me during this webinar. Now, before I go ahead, I would like to make sure that you can all see my screen and you can also hear my voice. So if you can see my screen properly and you can also hear me loud and clear, could you please confirm this to me over chat, please? We'll just take about 10 seconds for this. I'm just looking for a few confirmations from people that everything is fine. You can all hear me loud and clear, and you can also see my slide. All right, as I say that, I get a few confirmations. Thank you so much, Heather, Tony, Christopher, Richard, Kelly. Thank you all so very much. Thank you so much for those confirmations. Now, during this webinar, in case the voice or picture quality gets bad at any time, please bring it to my attention using the chat window, and I'll try to fix it right then and there. Also, during this webinar, please keep sending me your questions using the webinar panel. You should have an option there to send your questions. At the very end of the webinar, I'll have some time set aside for Q&A. By the way, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll all receive the recording over email within a couple of days. And at that point of time, you can definitely share it with your friends and colleagues. Well, so now I've spoken for 3 minutes already, and I'm yet to introduce myself. Can you believe that? My name is Ram Vaidyanathan, and I'm a cybersecurity specialist at ManageEngine. I've been with ManageEngine for the last 6 years now. In my role, I get to research about the latest techniques attackers are using against organizations. And I also get to learn from people like you about the ways in which organizations can stop attackers. People like you also give me a lot of insight about how things are developing in the cybersecurity market. And ManageEngine as a company uses this feedback to develop our security solutions. If you'd like to get in touch with me about anything, even if it's just to say hello, my email address is right there on your screen. It's ram.v@manageengine.com. I would love to hear from you. Alternatively, you can also add me on LinkedIn. I'm very much there on LinkedIn. So with that said, it's time to start this webinar. Let's get rolling with the agenda and see what we have in store for today. So here's the agenda for today. We'll first go over the clear and present danger posed by each of these attacks that you see on your screen. We'll see some compelling numbers that tell us why we should be wary of these attacks. Then we'll go over brute force attacks and see a live demo of a brute force attack. We'll then see what a password spray attack is and see a live demo of a password spray attack. We'll then talk about malware and see it in action. After that, we'll talk about the phishing challenge and how attackers can actually use phishing. We'll end the webinar talking about SQL injection and DDoS attacks. Now, throughout this webinar, we'll also bring up mitigation strategies wherever it's appropriate. Now, before we start, I would like to put a disclaimer here. I'll be showing you some demos of live attacks in a controlled environment. So please make sure that you use these only for the right reasons. It's actually illegal to perform these attacks in the real world. So we'll be seeing these attacks only to understand how attackers carry them out so we can defend ourselves better. Because like Sun Tzu said, it's very, very important to know your attackers. Anyways, first up, here are some statistics about each of these attacks. According to Verizon's 2020 data breach investigations report, over 80% of breaches caused by hacking involve brute force or the use of lost or stolen credentials. And when it comes to malware, over the last 10 years, there has been an 87% increase in malware infections. And currently, 17% of all hacks use malware. Phishing is also a big challenge. According to the FBI, phishing was the most common type of cybercrime in 2020. And phishing incidents nearly doubled in frequency from about 115,000 incidents in 2019 to about 241,000 incidents in 2020. SQL injection now represents nearly 2/3 or 65% of all web application attacks. This is data from 2019. And finally, as you can see here, a word on DDoS attacks. The cost of a DDoS attack averages between $20,000 to $40,000 per hour. So these numbers right here tell you why you should be concerned about these 5 attacks and why you should take steps to defend against these 5 attacks. Given that we have seen the dangerous side of each of these attacks, let's now understand what these attacks are, how they are performed by attackers, and what you can do to defend against them. We'll start things off by talking about brute force attacks. Anyways, here's how we can explain it. So I'm just going to read this out loud for you right now. A brute force attack is a hacking technique which employs a trial and error method of entering different username and password combinations with an automated tool or bot until access is finally granted. So as you can probably imagine, this is not a sophisticated type of an attack, but it does have a good success rate even today. So in this type of an attack, the attacker is not trying to exploit any vulnerability in the target application. They are simply trying their luck and attempting to force their way in. It's kind of like a burglar who wants to rob a house and keeps hammering a padlock and forces their way in. You may now have the question in your mind as to how this attack really works. Well, as you can see here on the slide, an attacker would need 2 things to perform this attack. They would need a username list and they would also need a password list. They will then repeatedly try different combinations of these usernames and passwords until they get successful breaking in. Now, to automate this process of repeated attempts of brute forcing, attackers typically use a tool that will perform these multiple login attempts. So as you can see here, both of these lists here are fed into an automated tool, which is then going to do these multiple login attempts. And whenever the right username and password combination is found, this tool is going to store it. And in case of a wrong username and password, well, the tool is just simply going to drop it. So that's the theory behind brute force attacks. Now let's see a live demo of a brute force attack and how it actually works. So I'm going to quickly go out of this presentation here and I'm going to go into my virtual machine setup. Now take a look at this. So over here, I have a few virtual machines in my lab setup. And this right here is a domain controller. It runs Windows Server 2019. And let me just go into the local server so you can see some details. Now take a look at this. The computer name is Quinta-DC and the domain that it's the domain is comfort.local. And this is a domain controller. I also have another 2 workstations here. They are both running Windows 10 and they're also connected to the domain comfort.local. And in both of these machines, there are multiple users. So I have also created various users in the domain. Now, anyways, this particular Windows 10 machine here, this happens to be the user Jim Riley's machine. You can see that Jim Riley is the user who's logged on. And this is going to be our attacker machine. So Jim is going to be our attacker, and he's going to try and brute force his way in. So now, how are we going to do this? We are going to try using a legitimate tool like PowerShell to brute force our way into accounts as a regular user called Jim Riley. Now, two things could have happened here. Jim is either an insider who has gone rogue, or this could actually be a case of an external attacker who has compromised Jim's account. So either of those two possibilities can exist. Anyways, as you can see here on the desktop, Jim Riley has two files stored. One is called user.txt. Let me just quickly open that for you. And you can see a list of usernames here. Possible usernames are in the domain, which is not very hard to get, especially if Jim is an insider. And then there is one more text file. It's called passwords.txt. And here Jim has stored certain passwords, which he feels that, these are passwords that users may be using in the network. So this is the list of passwords. Now, apart from creating these two files, Jim's also downloaded a Windows PowerShell script called brute force in his downloads folder. So let me quickly show that to you. Let's go into downloads, and you can see here that there's a brute force. There's a file called brute force. It's a Windows PowerShell script, which Jim has stored in the downloads folder. Now Jim is going to use PowerShell to break in. So let's quickly do that. So he's going to get into PowerShell, and he's going to get in as regular user. That's J Riley. And then he's going to cd into downloads, because that's where bruteforce.ps1 is stored. It's stored in our downloads folder. So let's quickly cd into that. And once that's done, he'll run a particular commandlet. It's called PowerShell.exe. And then -exec bypass. Now, this particular commandlet, what it's going to do is it's going to allow Jim to bypass certain execution policy and security policy controls. And once these security policy controls are bypassed, what it's going to allow him to do is it's going to allow him to use PowerShell in a much more better way. And he's going to be able to enumerate the domain and run a lot more different things. So this particular commandlet is going to be very, very critical. But it's very, very easy to do. Pretty much any user can run this, and then they can use PowerShell in the way that they want. And once that's done, we're going to have to import this particular module. So we have to type in import-module brute force.ps1. And once that's done, he's going to run the main script now. Well, the instructions are available in the code itself. So let's quickly open up the code here from the downloads folder. And you can see here that to compromise Active Directory or to brute force into Active Directory, we need to make use of this particular script that is given. So I'm just going to Control C this. I'm going to copy that. Let's close this. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to paste this. Let me open this up for you. Now take a look at this. Where it says targetdomain.com in the script, we've got to put in our domain. We know that the domain is called comfort.local. We saw that earlier. So let's just type that in. And then we have to give the path where the user list is stored. Now, where is that stored? That is stored in Jim's desktop. So let's quickly go into Jim's desktop. So this is the user list right here. I'm going to go into properties, security, and then copy the path here. I'm going to paste it over there. Right? And then the password list, well, the password list is going to be at the same path, except the file name is going to be different. It's password.txt. So let's just do that. We'll replace user with passwords. And then the service is Active Directory. Oh, I seem to have copied it over here as well. Okay, for some reason, something has gone wrong. Okay, so, okay, I don't know why this is coming up here. Anyway, so the first time you run it, it's going to say unable to contact domain. Maybe there is, it takes a little bit of time for it to be able to contact the domain. So let's just run it again and see whether it runs properly. And then there is success, as you can see here. Jim has successfully brute forced his way into certain accounts. And as you can see here, there is a user called David Capson who uses the password at 2. There is another user called Steve who uses the password at 123. Jim Riley's own password is password at 123, by the way. And then there is also an administrator account who uses the password at 123. So Jim has successfully brute forced his way in, and he's found out a lot of critical passwords in the domain. So that's how a brute force attack works. So let's close this now, and we'll go back into the presentation. To protect against a brute force attack, you've got to enforce robust password policies so that passwords are difficult to guess. So password at 123 is not a good password to use at all. Passwords that are a combination of numbers, letters, and special characters are the most difficult to guess. You can also implement two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication as an additional layer of security. You should limit login attempts for a specific time frame also. If an attempt goes beyond a particular threshold, the account should be locked out. So you've got to have a lockout policy in place. You can also introduce CAPTCHA, which requires users to identify a pattern of letters and numbers during the logon process. That's definitely going to help. And finally, apart from these preventive measures here, so all of these things, up until this particular point, these are all preventive measures. You can also use a solution like Log360, which will alert you whenever a brute force attack is detected. So this is a detection method. So apart from preventive measures, you also got to have a tool for detection. And that is what a solution like Log360 or pretty much any comprehensive SIM solution can do for you. So that's how you can protect against brute force attacks. Now, apart from the regular brute force attacks, attackers can also try a very related means of an attack called a password spray attack. In fact, this particular attack, a password spray attack, is the exact reverse of a regular brute force attack. In a password spray attack, attackers will try to gain access into a large number of accounts with a very small number of passwords or even just one password. For example, let's imagine that there is an organization with 100 employees. The attacker makes an intelligent guess that at least some of these employees will use the password summer 2016. So they will spray this particular password, summer 2016, to all the 100 different users in the domain and hope for a match. So that's what they're trying to do. In a regular brute force attack, they're trying to force their way into different accounts by guessing different passwords for a single account, for a single username. Whereas in a reverse brute force attack or a password spray attack, it is going to be one password that they're going to try against multiple usernames and hope for a match. So they will try a password like summer 2016 or a password like password at 123 to all the users in the domain and hope for a match. So that's what the theory is. Now let's see how this works in real life. So let's go back into our attacker's machine. So we are back into Jim's machine right now and in this Windows 10 virtual machine. So let me go into my downloads folder. And you can see right here that I've got this PowerShell script. It's called Domain Password Spray. I've got this downloaded. Now, where did I get this from? You may have the question, where did I get brute force, the PowerShell script for brute force from? Where did I get this particular PowerShell script from? Well, very, very easy. You can get it very easily off of GitHub. That's where I got it. So you can see that, well, Jim has got this particular PowerShell script stored in his downloads folder. Now we're going to run this and see how a password spray attack works. So let's go back into PowerShell. And we have to cd into downloads because that's where the script is stored. And then we have to give this commandlet PowerShell.exe -exec bypass to bypass the security controls. And then we've got to import the module. Import module, domain password spray.ps1. And once that's imported, we've got to now invoke it. This is where we are actually going to use the syntax of the script, which will be available within the script itself, usually. So invoke, this is the syntax, domain password spray. Password, then password at 1, 2, 3. So it makes it very clear to you right here. So we're going to try and spray this particular password in the entire domain comfort.local, and hopefully there is a match. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And as you can see here, the tool is already doing quite a few intelligent things for us. It finds out that there is no user lockout policy. Now that is definitely not a good thing. It also finds out that there are 5 users that it's got a password spray. So it gets that information out for us as well. Anyways, take a look over here. You've got to give a confirmation. Just type in Y and hit enter. And as you can see, our password spray attempt has been successful. And we find out that administrator uses the password at 123. And the user J Riley also uses the password at 123. So Jim has again successfully done a password spray attack. Well, let's go back into the presentation now. Now, the same best practices that we use to defend against brute force attacks can also be used to defend against password spray attacks. So all of these things that we spoke about earlier are valid for a password spray attack also, if you think about it. Now, I did tell you a little bit about a detection technique as well by using a solution like Log360. So we'll see how this part of it really works right now. And here I've got an instance of AD Audit Plus running. In fact, AD Audit Plus is a module within Log360. And within AD Audit Plus, if you go into reports, you've got different categories of reports, such as user logon reports. Then you've got local logon, log-off reports, ADFS auditing, and so on. But for this particular attack, the brute force and the reverse brute force attack, or password spray attack, we are most concerned about the user logon reports. And take a look at this particular report, the logon failures report. So you can make use of these reports and ensure that only people who are allowed access are actually doing the access. In case of things like brute force attacks, you can clearly see what is happening, and you can then get an instant alert about it as well. So all of these reports are going to empower you with information that something wrong is happening in the network. For example, there are so many failures, right? All of these failures are captured in this particular report in real time. So in case a particular user is trying to log on to his account 10 different times, ideally, there's got to be an account lockout policy, and it should never be the case. But in case that is the case, a user is trying to log on 10 different times, they're failed, and then on the 11th try, they are successful. That's a telltale sign of a brute force attack, right? This report is going to let you know about all of those things. And apart from letting you know about that, you can also go into the alerts tab on the top and get notified in real time. So you can get notified either by SMS or by a email once you set up an alert, so that you're always proactively looking for these brute force attacks. So that's how you can, actually detect your brute force attacks in your environment. Likewise, in this same solution, you can also monitor all PowerShell activities that are performed by users in the entire domain. So the brute force attack that we just ran together, right, that was done completely using PowerShell. But if I go to server audit over here, you've got a report on PowerShell auditing. So this is the category of report. It says PowerShell auditing. And if you go over here into module logging, you get details about all the PowerShell scripts, the commandlets that different users in the domain have run over time. So in case there is something strange, it will let you know right here. And just like we created an alert for a brute force attack, you can also create alerts for certain commandlets that are run in PowerShell. So anytime any user in the domain is running a strange commandlet, you can get alerted about it through this solution, or pretty much any comprehensive SIEM solution. So these are the weapons that you can use to defend your organization against brute force and password spray attacks. Now let's talk about another very dangerous attack that attackers could use on organizations, and that's malware. Malware basically stands for malicious software. It is any unwanted software that an unauthorized person, such as an attacker, runs on your computer. And the scary part is that this malicious software can be disguised within legitimate applications, such as a Word document or even an Excel file. An innocent employee may not even know it, and they could have become a victim. Now, it turns out that there are 6 main types of malware, and these are viruses, worms, trojans, ransomware, adware, and spyware. Now, malware is mainly used to harvest user information. Once it gets installed within a user's machine, it can then be used to establish a command and control connection with the hacker. And then the hacker can pretty much do anything. Once malware creeps into a computer, it can then go on to wreak havoc as it spreads to other parts of the network. So now let's see how this actually works in the real world. And we're going to go back into our attacker's machine. We're going to go back into Jim Riley's machine. So let's do that. Let me close this. Let me close this as well. Now here, let me go into the System32 folder. So if I go into this PC, go into my local C drive, Windows. I've got my System32 folder right here. And here I've got a subfolder called Lucky Strike. And within that, I've got Lucky Strike Master. And here, as you can see, I've got a Windows PowerShell script. It's called Lucky Strike. I've got that downloaded off of GitHub as well. Now, I'll be running this particular PowerShell script using PowerShell. So please watch this, right? So let's go into PowerShell right now. And I've got to run this as an administrator because I've got this PowerShell script stored in my System32 folder. So let me run this as administrator. And we are into our System32 folder right here. Now let's CD into the relevant folder. So here's where Lucky Strike is stored. So let me go into properties, security. I'm just going to copy this path here. I've got to say CD, obviously. Once that's done, then we've got to do the usual. We've got to run PowerShell.exe-exec bypass. Once that's done, we've got to import the module to run this. Lucky Strike.ps1. And you see that Lucky Strike has been powered up for us. Now let me just expand that. Okay, so you can see it better. Now I'm going to follow through several steps to create a malicious payload within an Excel file. So please watch what I'll be doing just now. You've first got to go into catalog options. So select 2. And then we've got to select 1 because we want to add a payload to a catalog. So just select 1. And then after that, we've got to give a title. So this is the title of the malicious application that we'll be running. So we can give it any title, but in this particular malicious Excel file that we'll be creating together, we'll be running the calculator application. So to the user, to the regular user, once they enable macros in the Excel file, a regular calculator application is going to be running, is going to start running. But this is actually going to be a malicious file, right? So let's give it a title. We'll call it calc9. The target IP is optional. So just enter through that, enter through this. The description is optional as well. Enter through that. And then choose the payload type. Now, there are several options that you can choose here. So we can just run it as a shell command. So the selection can be 1. And then the payload text, the actual command to run. So what is the actual command that we have to run in order to get the calculator application running? Well, we've got to run calc.exe, right? So that's what we need to type in over here and hit enter. After this, we see that the payload has been added over here. So it tells us that over here. So now we can go back. So just say 99. Then go into payload options in the main menu. Now we got to select a payload. So 1 once again. And it's got to be an Excel file. So 1 again. Now we need to set the actual payload when that Excel file is run. So what is the title that we gave this application? We gave it the title calc9. So just choose 9, hit enter. And once that's done, you've got to choose the infection method. And we want it to be a shell command. So the selection should be 1. And we are done. So choose 99 here. 99 once again to go back. And then here you have file options. So go into 3. What do you want to do with those file options? You just see that right now. And then here, take a look at this. You have several file options. Well, we want to generate a new file, right? So the selection has got to be 1. And as soon as you do this selection and hit enter, what this application or what this is actually going to do for us is it's going to create a malicious Excel file, which is going to ask the user to run a macro once it's opened. And once the user enables macros on the Excel file, it's going to open up a calculator application. It's going to run that application. And unbeknownst to that user, malware is going to start getting downloaded onto his system. So that's how simple it is. Now, unfortunately, this last step of the process, I'm not able to show that to you because I don't have Microsoft Excel installed in this particular virtual machine. But that is just the last stretch right here. If you've got Microsoft Excel installed in the machine, you can just hit enter over here and it's going to do what I just told you. It's going to create that Excel file for you. It's that simple. Now, to the user, once they run that Excel file, right? Once they run that, once they enable macros, it's going to look like a normal calculator application is running. But in fact, a malicious code will be running in the background. And once that is done, what can an attacker really do practically? The attacker could basically use something like a phishing email to send this malicious file to a potential victim. So that's how malware can actually get downloaded onto a victim's machine. Now, let me just show you how you can defend against malware in a solution like AD Audit Plus. So let me quickly go back into AD Audit Plus. And here, let me go into analytics and then into anomalies. Anomalous process activity, new process on server. Now, I don't have data to show you on this particular report, but in this particular report, you'll get to know whenever a strange process runs on a server for the very first time. Machine learning algorithms are used to identify these new processes. And the ability to detect these new processes, these new strange processes running on servers for the very first time, that can go a long way in detecting malware in organizations. It's now a good time to address the third topic of the day, and that's phishing attacks. According to a report by FireEye, 1 in every 101 emails is malicious. Phishing is a type of a cyber attack that uses email to trick recipients into believing the message is genuine and encourages them to either download a malicious attachment or to share valuable personal information such as financial information, social security numbers, or login credentials. How a phishing attack actually works is that the attacker first creates a login page of a trusted website that looks identical to the original site, but it is actually fake. Then the attacker lures the victim to this login page of a malicious site by sending a scam email. And once the victim is there, the victim is prompted to enter their login credentials. After the victim enters their credentials, the PHP script that redirects them to the original website processes their information. And this PHP script transfers the stolen credentials to the hacker's server. Finally, the attacker uses the stolen credentials to hack into the victim's account. So that's how phishing actually works. Now, apart from the regular phishing that you just saw over here, there is also a special phishing attack, and that is called a spear phishing attack. Now, unlike regular phishing, spear phishing targets specific individuals within an organization. This approach requires thorough research of the victims. Often, attackers will target victims whose personal information is available on the internet. By accessing victims' social networking profiles, attackers can track down targets' email addresses, job titles, where they work, and so much more. Using these details, attackers can send a convincing but fraudulent message to their targets. So that's the theory of how phishing works. Let's take some time now and see how phishing attack actually works in the real world. So we're going to go back into our virtual machine setup. And for a change, I'm not going to be going into Jim's machine. So Jim is not the bad guy right now in this scenario. We're going to run this particular attack off of a Kali Linux machine that I've got over here. So this is another virtual machine that I'm running in my lab environment. And we're going to conduct this particular attack through this machine. So let me quickly log into this. There we go. I've just logged in. Now, there is a tool called the Social Engineer Toolkit. This is an open source Python-driven tool aimed at penetration testing around social engineering. It can be easily downloaded from GitHub, and you can run it from Kali Linux. So we'll be running Social Engineer Toolkit that I've already downloaded through this machine right here. So let me quickly open up the terminal. And let me cd into SE Toolkit. That's where I've got it saved. And then let's power it up. So Social Engineer Toolkit is all powered up for us. We're going to do a phishing attack through a social engineering attack. So let's just watch this here. We've got to choose the number 1 over here. It's going to be a social engineering attack. So 1. And here you have the option of doing a mass spear phishing attack, but you also have the option of performing a website attack, which can also be used for phishing. I'll show this to you just now. So we are talking about option number 2 here. So just choose 2 over here. Now we'll be using the credential harvester attack method. And as you can see here, the credential harvester method will utilize web cloning of a website that has a username and password field and harvest all the information posted to the website. So the selection should be 3. And over here, we've got to try the site cloner. This will completely clone a website of your choosing and allow you to utilize the attack vectors within the completely same web application you are trying to clone. So we'll be trying the site cloner right now. We're going to try creating a fake website together. So 2 is going to be the selection. And what's the IP address where you want all of this information to be listened to? So this is the attacker's machine. This is where we want to get all the information. So let's just copy that 192.168.216.137. That is this machine, this particular machine right here. Hit enter. And what's the URL that you want to clone? We can try any social media website. We can try Facebook, for example. So HTTP www.facebook.com. And once that's done, as it says over here, information will be displayed to you as it arrives below. So this particular tool, it started listening for us. So this is the attacker's machine. It's listening in. And whenever some credentials are coming its way, it's going to listen to that and it's going to let us know. So let's now go into a regular browser. And I'm going to type in that particular IP address, 192.168.216.137, and take a look at what happens right now. Now, this, my friends, let me remind you, is not the real Facebook website. This is actually a cloned website. It can look like Facebook, but it certainly is not Facebook, right? We've just cloned it. Now, If I give any email address over here, let me give my personal email ID over here and let me give a random password. It's obviously not going to let me sign in. But the moment I sign in, if we have done this right, you've got to be able to listen to all of that over here. So let me just see where it is. Now take a look at this. Let me just highlight this for you. Do you see this here? This is what I typed in, right? This is my personal email account, my Gmail account, and this was a random password that I typed up. Well, we get all of that. So this is how an attacker can actually listening in and take down credentials, right? So the credential harvester has done its job. Now, what can the attacker practically do? They can send a phishing email inviting users to this clone site and get the person's credentials. That's how simple it is. So they'll just write an email, and instead of facebook.com, they send that particular URL that we have, that IP address. They will redirect them to that particular IP address, and the innocent victim is going to think that that is the real Facebook or that is the real website, and they're going to give up their credentials over there. Now, apart from this particular tool here, you can also do a few other things. Let me just show you that on the main menu. Now, you can also do a spear phishing attack, right? So you can just choose one over here. And you can perform a mass email attack. So that's another way of doing spear phishing. So you can choose one. And as you can see here, there are different kinds of payloads that you can create. From here, you can follow the steps and perform a phishing attack as well. So this particular tool, the Social Engineer Toolkit, is very, very powerful. And if you're a penetration tester, it's going to help you a lot. So that's how simple it is. To protect your users from falling victim to a phishing scam, it's important that you educate them to be cautious with personal and financial information. You've got to educate your users to watch out for emails that convey a sense of urgency and ask them to take immediate action, like giving away financial information. You've got to ask your users to avoid unsolicited emails that prompt them to click on URLs, even those that appear to be legitimate. Your users should not open emails from senders they aren't familiar with. They should never download an attachment from an unknown sender, as it could be malware. And they should always, whenever possible, type the web address directly into their browser rather than clicking on links given in an email. So these are some of the things that you can do to prevent a phishing attack taking place. Now, as a security professional, you can also use a solution like ManageEngine Log360's Exchange Reporter Plus module. And this particular capability, it can track incoming and outgoing email messages, monitor mailbox sizes, perform Exchange traffic analysis, and also keep spam away from Active Directory. Using a solution like this, you can also keep a tab on the number of messages sent and received by each Exchange server using server traffic reports. So that's how ManageEngine Log360 can help you defend against phishing. Okay, now are you all ready? It's time to talk about one more highly prevalent attack, and that's SQL injection. SQL injection attacks are used by attackers to take down numerous web applications and web servers. A lot of the websites we go to have a login page. This is the case for so many websites such as Facebook, Twitter, even our banking websites. And on the login page, we need to provide our username and password. And authentication is done in the backend. So the username could either be our email or it could be a username that we create. And of course, every login page is going to have this password field as well. But how does this authentication of the username and password actually work? Well, in the backend, there is some sort of a database that stores all the users' usernames and passwords. The moment we hit login or submit on the login page, a SQL query is going to be run in the backend, where it checks if the credentials or the username and password pair that we provided exists in the database. In case the username and password pair exists in the database, the result of this query is true and the authentication is validated. The user can then log on to the page. In case the username and password pair does not exist in the database, the result of this query is going to be false and the authentication is not validated. The user then cannot log in to the page. But imagine this scenario with me. What if an attacker is somehow able to manipulate this SQL query? What if they are able to manipulate it so that the result of this query always returns the true value? This is called a SQL injection attack. Basically, they manipulate the database query in order to make it do something that it's not supposed to do. And if they are able to do that, it doesn't even matter what username and password they provide on the login page. The SQL query is going to return a true value, and the attacker will immediately get access. A malicious user with sufficient knowledge of SQL can manipulate the inputs provided on the application to retrieve data they aren't supposed to have access to. Anyway, on the login page, if instead of providing a valid username input or a valid password input, the attacker manipulates the input, their job is done. This malicious query gets executed in the database and it returns the results to the attacker. In fact, they can also manipulate the input to such an extent that they can retrieve the entire username and password database values in some cases. The attacker can then log in even as an administrator and get comprehensive access to the entire website. The final attack that we'll go over today are DOS and DDoS attacks. DOS stands for denial of service. As the name suggests, the victim gets denied some sort of a service that they are entitled to. Imagine a situation in which a user needs to access a server which houses some critical information in order to perform their job. If an attacker floods this server with a very high number of illegitimate requests, packets, or messages, the user is not going to be able to access the server or perform their job. In effect, they are being denied a service. If the denial of service emanates from a single source or a single attacker's machine, that's called a DOS attack or a DOS attack. However, if the illegitimate requests and packets are coming from multiple sources, then it becomes a distributed denial of service or a DDoS attack. The first thing an attacker does is take control of a network and the devices in it. These devices are infected with malware and used to carry out the attack. This collection of infected devices under the attacker's control is called a botnet. Rather than infiltrating the network in a DOS or DDoS attack, the objective of the hacker is to take down the target site and make it unavailable to regular users. This could affect the reputation of the organization and lead to a loss of trust among customers. So that's how a DOS or a DDoS attack actually works. Now, how to mitigate DOS and DDoS attacks? You've got to monitor traffic to your web applications by identifying any anomalous spike in traffic coming from any one IP address or location. You've got to keep your firewalls and routers updated with the latest security patches. And you should also invest in a DOS protection service that will detect unusual traffic activity and redirect it away from your network. So that's how you can actually protect against these attacks. All right, now I do have a few things to give to you before I let you go for the day. And these are both going to be ebooks. Now, these are some additional resources that you can read. This particular ebook is on tried and tested best practices for Active Directory security. In this ebook, we go over 8 different real-life examples and use cases of things that could go wrong in Active Directory and measures that you could take to protect against those calamities. So I'll just show this particular ebook to you. So here's the page. I'll just copy paste this on the chat window so that you can access this at your convenience. I would really recommend that you give this ebook a read. It's a very, very light read. So you can access this whenever time permits. And likewise, I've also got another ebook to share with you. This ebook is on combating hacking techniques, DDoS, cryptojacking, and ransomware. We did go over the DDoS attack today, but this ebook, it also goes over cryptojacking and ransomware, 2 other very popular attacks, very relevant in the present day. This ebook is slightly more involved. It's about 32 pages in length. So it's probably going to take some more time to go through this ebook, but I would highly recommend that you go through this at your convenience. So let me paste this URL on the chat window also. There you go. You've got to have both those URLs on the chat right now. So you can give this a read whenever time permits. Now I've got to run a few polls. I'll be launching these polls on your screen right now. Let me quickly go ahead and launch that. So you'll have two questions popping up on your screen right now. Question number one is, how do you know Manage Engine Log 360? And the second question is, do you want a product specialist to assist you with a free evaluation of the solution? So if you can take a moment to answer these two questions for me, that would be really great. Obviously, in a 45-minute, 50-minute webinar like this one, there is only so much that I can cover. But in case you're interested in other cyber attacks, the other things that could go wrong in this day and age, the different tactics that attackers could use against an organization, please let us know and we'll be able to take you through those use cases as well. I see a lot of responses coming through. So thank you so much for this. We'll just give it another 10 seconds. By the way, I hope that I got you at least a little interested in penetration testing and how cyber criminals operate. If you've got any questions about the things that we went over today, by all means, let me know. You can use the Q&A panel right now to send me your questions, or you can also send me an email. I'm very, very passionate about this particular topic. And if you're interested as well, we can always connect. Okay, let me end this particular poll. I've got one more poll to run right now, and that is going to be about the session feedback. So if you can answer these 4 questions for me that you see on your screen, that'll be really great. This is all about how this webinar experience was for you today. All right, and just as you are answering that, let me take this opportunity to thank you all for being a part of this webinar. You have been a lovely audience. I see many people have asked questions using the Q&A tab. So I'll be still online for the next 10 minutes answering those questions. If you have any further questions or comments or suggestions or things that you would like to see in terms of webinars in the future, please let me know. I'm always happy to receive an email from you. My email address is ram.v@manageengine.com. Thank you all so very much once again. Have a pleasant day. Until next time, please take care.